Welcome to Here's My Story channel. I'm David. Alex, Sarah, and I gathered in my grandfather's bedroom. Our grandfather was on his deathbed, living his final moments. His face bore a mixture of sadness and peace. My grandfather slowly lifted his head and turned to Alex. With trembling hands, he took a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to him. "Alex," he said, his voice both shaky and resolute, "this villa is now yours. However, it will fully belong to you after your grandmother passes away." Alex's eyes lit up. "The villa by the lake, Grandpa? Really?" My grandfather nodded. "Yes, Alex. I hope you build a happy life there after your grandmother passes away." Then he turned to Sarah and took a bankbook from his pocket. "Sarah," he said, "this is yours. However, you can't use this money until you turn 18. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked at the bankbook. "Oh my God, $100,000 is mine, Grandpa?" My grandfather smiled. "Yes, Sarah. I hope you use this money to go to a good university and have a successful life." Then it was my turn. My grandfather reached into his pocket again and pulled out an old, rusty pocket watch. When he handed it to me, I was confused. "Grandpa, what is this?" I asked. My grandfather looked at me with a tired smile. "This watch is now yours, David. Take good care of it and understand the value of time," he said. Alex and Sarah couldn't hold back their laughter. "A pocket watch? You've got to be kidding," Alex said. "Come on," I said. "Our grandfather is sick. Be respectful." At that moment, my grandfather's eyes closed. A deep silence fell over the room. My heart was pounding. Grandpa is gone," I said with a trembling voice. Sarah and Alex suddenly became silent. The moment our grandfather took his last breath was a great shock for all of us. The next day, we sat down for dinner as a family. The silence was broken by my father's concerned look at me. "David, what's wrong, son? You seem down," my father said with concern. I bowed my head and took a deep breath. My grandfather deemed only this old pocket watch worthy for his favorite grandchild, I said angrily. My mother leaned toward me. "David, maybe there's a reason he gave you this watch. You know your grandfather. Everything he did had a meaning," she said with a slight smile. I rolled my eyes. "What could it be, Mom? It's just a watch." I pressed the button on the watch. Suddenly, my mother and father froze, staring at me. "Mom? Dad? Are you okay?" I asked in fear. There was no response. No one was moving. My heart started racing, and my hands were shaking. I took a few steps back and looked around. Everything had stopped. I looked at my mother's face. Her eyes were vacant and expressionless. Suddenly, my mother blinked and looked at me with a worried expression. "David, are you okay? What happened? Why are you standing?" she asked, making eye contact with me. In a panic, I pressed the button on the watch again. Suddenly, a lightning bolt struck in my mind. The watch! I realized the watch somehow stopped time. But how long would this last? I held the watch tightly and looked at it. After about 30 seconds, my family started moving again. I thought for a moment and realized that this watch could only stop time for 30 seconds and could only be used 3 times a day. This was truly incredible. My grandfather had given it to me because he loved me the most. The next day, on my way to school, I encountered the bullies who always waited at their usual corner. They started laughing mockingly when they saw me. "Look who's coming," said the skinny one in a mocking tone. "Let's see what he's going to give us today," added the big bully, laughing. "Maybe he'll give us the nice burger his mom made for lunch. What do you think?" said the skinny one, bursting into laughter. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, but I had a sense of determination inside me. I looked at them fearlessly. "Unfortunately, I can't give you anything today," I said. The big bully was surprised. His eyes lit up with anger. "Oh yeah? Then you deserve a good beating," he shouted. Calmly, I said, "I don't think so," and pressed the button on my watch. Everything froze for a moment. The bullies stood motionless. Laughing, I ran away from there. When I got home from school, I found Alex standing in the middle of the living room. "Hey buddy, I've come for a rematch on PlayStation," he said excitedly. We went to my room and started playing PlayStation. After a while, Alex said, "Hey, can your mom make us some nice burgers?" "Of course," I said with a smile and left the room. When Alex was alone, he started snooping around and found the watch my grandfather had given me on my desk. At that moment, I returned to the room. "Hey buddy, the burgers will be ready in 15 minutes, I said, but I froze when I saw the watch in Alex's hand. Alex turned to me and asked, "Hey buddy, don't get me wrong, but why did our grandfather give his favorite grandchild this stupid watch?" "Buddy, I don't know either. Please give me the watch," I said in a panic. Alex laughed. "Buddy, you suddenly panicked. I wonder what happens when I press this button." Just as he was about to press the button, I rushed toward him and shouted, "No!" Suddenly, everything froze, and I stood still. Alex looked around in confusion but didn't understand what was happening. "Buddy, what happened? Why aren't you moving?" he asked, but got no response. He looked around and began to understand the situation. "So this watch stops time," he said to himself. At that moment, 30 seconds passed, and I started moving again. "Buddy, please give me the watch," I said in a pleading voice. Alex looked at me with a sly expression. "Buddy, it's too late now," he said, and pressed the button on the watch again. While I stood frozen in the room, Alex quickly ran away. The next day after school, I went to Alex's house. No matter how much I knocked on the door, no one answered. I had a feeling of unease inside me. I had to solve this problem myself because I couldn't tell anyone about the watch's ability to stop time. When I got home, I found my grandmother sitting with us. She looked at me with a sad expression and said, "How could you give the watch to Alex?" I turned to my grandmother with a sad expression and said, "I didn't give it to him, he stole it from me." My grandmother took a deep breath and said, "Alex and his stepmother used the watch to stop time and evict me from the villa by the lake," she said sadly. I was very surprised. "How could they do this to you, Grandma? Grandpa already gave that villa to him, and it was supposed to be his after you passed away," I said. My grandmother turned to me and said firmly, "You must immediately take that watch from someone as malicious and ill-intentioned as Alex, David." That evening, I retreated to my room and started making plans on how to get the watch back. Considering Alex's malice and the power of the watch, I knew I had to come up with a careful plan. The next night, my plan went into action. As Alex left the house, he heard a sound coming from the bushes. When he turned his head, he saw a cardboard cutout of my grandfather among the bushes. Written in large letters on the cutout were the words, "Give the watch back to David immediately." Alex's face turned pale with fear. In a panic, he pressed the button on the watch and time stopped. Alex started running like crazy. After 30 seconds, when time resumed, he was out of breath. As he looked back, he saw the same cardboard cutout on a nearby tree, again with the words, "Give the watch back to David immediately." Alex's fear intensified. He pressed the button on the watch again and time stopped once more. He started running like crazy again. After 30 seconds, he stopped and looked around, trying to understand what was happening. At that moment, I emerged from the bushes and quickly grabbed the watch from Alex's hand. Alex stepped back in shock. "Give it to me right now!" he shouted angrily. Smiling, I said, "Buddy, it's too late now," and pressed the button on the watch. Time stopped and Alex stood frozen with an angry expression. I ran away while he stood there, immobile.
We have great news! You're invited to our new YouTube channel, I Told My Story. We'll be sharing new stories every week. Here's My Story and I Told My Story are sibling channels, and both will continue to share amazing stories.
My plan was actually simple. When Alex left the house, I placed my grandfather's cutout in his path and mounted a light-activated motion sensor on the cutout, which I had bought online. When Alex approached the cutout, the sensor activated and lit up my grandfather's face. I knew Alex would panic and stop time, running for about 30 seconds. Calculating this, I placed the second cutout with a motion sensor in the next location he would reach. When Alex arrived there, the sensor activated again, lighting up my grandfather's cutout in the dark of the night. I was sure Alex would stop time and run away, again, and I calculated his next step, waiting in the bushes. When Alex arrived, looking back in fear, I took the watch from his hand. After this incident, my grandmother went to court and reclaimed the villa from Alex, transferring it to me with a new contract. Now, we live in this villa with my grandmother on weekends. One day, when the doorbell rang, we saw Alex at the door. He apologized for what he had done and begged my grandmother to give him the villa back. My grandmother, smiling, said, "Of course," and froze Alex with the watch in her hand. Turning to me, she said, "Your turn." I put Alex in a wheelbarrow and threw him into the lake next to the villa. After 30 seconds, Alex found himself in the lake and started jumping in anger. My grandmother and I started laughing as we watched him. By the way, you can support us by subscribing to our channel. Bye!